Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is having a lovely weekend so far. Uh, I've had a pretty decent weekend so far. I was out last night with my friends, which was quite good, and drank plenty of Guinness, and that is not necessarily a good thing for me, but there you go. It was fun. So what you're gonna do? Tonight's stream, obviously, we're going to have a guest. Like I've said in the description, Simon's going to be joining me in just a second. And we're going to be sitting through the super extra bum-numbing version of Dawn of the Dead, the complete cut, which is always a fascinating one for me, just because of it's kind of cool to see just everything that goes on in this movie. George Romero would not approve, but never mind. That's how these things go, isn't it? So, without further ado, I shall just bring in Simon, and yeah, let's do that now, actually. So, there we go. Good evening, Simon.
Hello, how's it going, everyone?
It's nice to be doing this, and it just not just being a video with you holding a DVD up and stuff like that. It's always a pleasure. It's good to have you back. It's been a little while.
Yeah, looking forward to this.
Can you remember what the last one we did was? I can't remember what the last one we did was.
Oh, God. No, I can't remember at all.
I think we're getting a bit old and senile, but there you go.
It was before COVID, I know that much.
Oh, I know. Did we not do one over COVID? I don't know. Don't know. It doesn't matter, does it really? And of course, the reason I brought you on is because you're always rocking something Dawn of the Dead. I see tonight you got, was it Night of the Living Dead as your T-shirt on? Yeah. And tragically, tell us about the mug.
Yeah, as a lot of you know, I had a Dawn of the Dead mug with the old UK poster on, and unfortunately the handle broke the other day, and I've not been able to get a replacement one yet, so instead I've got me Zombie Flesh Eaters mug with me.
Ah, the knockoff.
Yeah, so yeah, that'll have to do.
It'll have to do, yes it will. So if anybody's got any emergency adhesive, then maybe we'll be able to save the day at some point. But yes, unfortunately, the famous mug will not be making an appearance tonight. Well, I mean, other than this mug, obviously. So we will get started very soon, because this is going to be about, this is just over 2.5 hours long, this version, but I think it's going to be worth the sitting through. Anybody who hasn't seen this before, obviously there are the three main cuts, which Simon will be able to tell us about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously there's the first one that most people know, which is the theatrical cut. There's also the extended cut, sometimes known as the director's cut, and then there's the alternate European cut. Now, the extended cut, that was George Romero's first, cut of the film, which he put together for showing at the Cannes Film Festival. After it had played there, he decided to cut it down a bit more, and that was a version that was released theatrically. Now, Dario Argento, who I'm sure everybody knows, he provided a lot of the financing for the film under the condition that he could release his own edit of the movie in mainland Europe, and that's the one that was released on the continent.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because I mean, we'll talk about it as we sort of get to various scenes throughout the movie. But the Dario Argento cut has some very surprising omissions within the film. But this version is pretty much an amalgam of those three cuts, probably plus a few more obscure cuts that were around. But we will hit some of those bits at the beginning. I mean, it literally opens with, I think this one opens with the slightly different reveal of Fran, but we will get onto that in just a moment. So the link is in the description. So apologies for the channel name. It's a bit of a funny channel name, that is, guys. God, but there you go. But it seems to be quite a good version, and I couldn't see any kind of any of that DRM avoiding shimmer or anything like that. So hopefully we should be good today. So We'll give you a couple of moments just to sort of get linked up with that, and if you could start giving us a thumbs up when you're ready, then we will get cracking in no time. New addition to the stream, these headphones. I just mentioned them because I've just spent 180 quid on these things. They're second hand, but my god, they're good. Rather implausibly named III Studio Plus wireless things with zero latency. So hopefully, any movies that I watch with these things on, it won't look like a Chinese, like a Hong Kong movie, so which would be quite nice. But things are, I'd noticed partly for the stream, partly for all that kind of stuff. But these are really good. I highly, highly recommend them if you're after anything like that. Well, I guess we'll just give everybody a couple of moments and just talk about kind of like what's your first exposure to this movie, Simon?
God, it was sometime in the early 90s, I think. Me and my girlfriend at the time went to the video shop, and on the older titles, you were allowed to pick out, 2 or 3 titles. You're allowed to keep them for 5 days on the older titles, and one of them was Dawn of the Dead. And I thought, because I've never seen that one before and heard a lot about it, so I thought, all right, let's give this one a go. And I was actually really surprised. I really liked it. It's the sort of thing I would have done if there was a zombie apocalypse. Go to the nearest mall, barricade myself in there, and live off the supplies till they ran out.
Yeah, I remember the first time I was aware of the movie was I think it was the first time I ever watched a video nasty, and it was a double bill. I've mentioned it before. Double bill of Cannibal Apocalypse and I Spit on Your Grave, and the trailer was on that movie, and I remember watching it, and it kind of stuck with me for years. And I read a bit about it. It was all the books, it's like the John McCarthy books, splatter movies and all that kind of stuff had this movie kind of like featured in there, but we couldn't watch it for such a long time because it wasn't available until about 91, 92, was it, in the UK? Not legitimately. And so I eventually sort of ended up watching the first release of it, which is kind of a further cut down version of the British cut, if I remember right. And so there's no end cut out of that movie, and they cut out a few certain scenes which we'll mention as we go along. But then eventually they released a canned cut with just a few seconds of cuts, and then eventually it came out uncut, and this is like kind of uncut this version, which is going to be particularly entertaining. But okay. So was the last dual stream Manchester Morgue? Did I? Yeah, I did. No, I think you're right. Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, wasn't it?
Could have been.
Yeah, because if I remember rightly, I was tapping your knowledge of the locations and stuff.
Yeah, it could have been, because as I say, I've visited most of the locations there and, filmed them, so...
That's such a good film, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I regret to report, though, that the building where George had his shop, that's been demolished now.
Oh, no.
Because, the shops... I think the building was part of Manchester Music Academy or something.
Righto.
Most of the building was used for housing the students in, but the bottom row, they had shops, facing outwards. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was at some time during the 1990s, they shut the shops down and just converted them and made them all part of the student accommodation.
Right. So
I think, because obviously there were still shops there in the 1980s when they made the film. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming it must have been sometime in the 90s.
Right. We seem to be losing a lot of stuff, don't we?
The whole building's now been demolished. And they've put new student accommodations there. Mm-hmm. So
time marches on. And talking about loss, part of the reason that we're doing this stream is David Emge a couple of weeks ago passed away. And ironically, literally the week before, I was thinking about doing this movie, and just got sort of held up, and then obviously I couldn't. I couldn't find the time with Simon last week, so we moved it to this week. But this is in part a nod to David Emge, who sadly is no longer with us. So we'll get to
I
enjoy
was
Flyboy.
sorry. I was very fortunate. I actually got to meet him and the other members of Dawn of the Dead a few years ago. I
Hmm.
think well, I say a few years ago. I think it was like 2005 or something. But they attended a Comic Con in Manchester,
Hmm.
so I got my Dawn of the Dead DVD signed by them all.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, also got to meet George Romero
Mhm.
and Tom Savini.
Ah, wow, there's a lot of really cool people. Okay, I think we are going to get started at this point. So, you know the routine, folks. We'll do a countdown from 5 and go on go. So, stand by your beds, folks, and we're going to go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, here we go. Ah, that red carpet.
Yeah. So this one doesn't have that blue tint. This is what I was talking about.
No, that's it. What was strange was the original UK release of this under the
Mm.
name Zombies Dawn of the Dead, and the initial post VRA release. Where you see Fran having the nightmare, that had like a blue tint to it,
Mm.
and it was like distorted, as though you can tell she's dreaming, and it sort of, as the guy wakes her up and says, "Are you okay?" That's where it snaps out of
Mm.
it. But
Yeah,
I've not
and
seen that on any other release.
no, and I'm not quite sure how that happened. Whether that was maybe some sort of reproduction issue, but it doesn't seem like that. It does seem like an editing thing.
Yeah,
And you always kind of like, I always had the feeling it was supposed to be a kind of, it's a Fran's head sort of thing. 'Cause she's really the POV character for this entire
yeah.
movie is Fran. It's the world as she sees it, and that's kind of like
George
a
Romero there.
yeah, and Christine Romero.
Yep.
And he's a reasonable actor, is George Romero as well. He only ever does these little snippets, but he does them well. So this section, I think, is the taken from the Italian version, I think, with the music.
Yes, it's got the Argento music on it, or the
Mm,
Goblins music, should I say?
yeah, which is one of the things I found about the whole Argento version was it was a bit smothered by so much Goblin music.
Mm.
Because as great as it is, I think George Romero probably put it fairly well. Where he said it was like wall to wall.
Yeah, because the when Romero did his cut for the Cannes Film Festival, he used a lot of library music because the
Mm,
Goblin soundtrack wasn't ready.
mm,
So there's like two or three Goblins tracks in there, but not many. The rest of it's library music.
mm,
Well, when he came to do his theatrical release and he had the Goblins music, I think he preferred some of the library music he'd used.
mm,
So the intro here on the theatrical version, it's a mishmash of library and Goblins music. It sort of like cuts, it switches between the two constantly.
mm. And it's
And as I say,
interesting,
this
though,
is
isn't it?
the Goblins.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
interesting. It's interesting the tonal difference it makes when you change that soundtrack because particularly he used that mall music a lot more in the theatrical cut as opposed to the Goblin stuff, which really changes the tone of the movie in terms of like kind of I think George seemed to want to make it scary and fun at the same time. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on he wanted to kind of play with. Where Argento sort of went the Goblin stuff is a lot more threatening and much more horror movie, if you like. And that is one of the biggest differences I think between the Romero cuts and the Argento cut is the depth of action. George Romero takes a lot more time to breathe with the movie and give the characters a lot more time, whereas Argento wanted it kind of like running.
Yeah, I know one of the problems this film had with the film censors, when they first submitted it, they submitted the Argento version, which is it cuts a lot of the dialogue and focuses on the action a lot
Mm-hmm.
and the violence.
Mm-hmm.
and as a result, the film censors wanted a hell of a lot of cuts. So they then submitted the US theatrical version, and as a result, because it had more narrative in it and it was slower paced, were a lot more lenient with it.
Mm.
Although they still edited out some of the goriest scenes, like the exploding head, for example.
Yeah. It took the longest time for me to get to see that bit.
Yeah, I must admit, the first time I saw this properly uncut, I got it on a bootleg VHS from a video fair down in London. It was of the director's cut.
Mm. Otherwise known as the Cannes cut. Romero
Yes,
always kind of
yeah.
disowned it, didn't he, to an extent?
Yeah, well, when it was first released on Laserdisc, they called it the director's cut, and the name just keeps sticking in my head. But technically, you're right; it should be either the extended cut or the Cannes cut.
Stephen says, can I just say I work in TV and you don't make horns behind a presenter's head? No, you don't. It's a little bit of an exceptional circumstance, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's because these people didn't agree with what this politician guy was saying.
Yeah.
So that's why you're not supposed to boo and jeer them off camera either.
But it's kind of an interesting scene in a lot of respects, because this whole thing really is a microcosm of the movie, which is a microcosm of the bigger world. Yeah. And this is just, containing society's craziness and chaos in this situation, just in this small space. And George Romero for me has always been
there we go.
Yeah, he's always been very good at having these sort of small versions of the bigger world. I mean, when you think about Day of the Dead as for instance, and the difference between what he wanted to do and what he actually ended up doing.
Here comes Flyboy.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, David Emge.
Absolutely.
I'll say, when I met him at the Comic-Con, he was a really nice guy. I mean, both him and Ken Foray, both of them, really super guys, super nice guys. I was going to say, the security guard, he had to show the pastor, we had some epic 70s sideburns. That's one thing that dates a movie, sideburns.
It is funny though. I mean, the movie does have kind of like those sort of things that are very much of its time, but it also manages to feel quite timeless as well. Star Wars was always a film that kind of managed to do that. There's little bits that you kind of go, "My God, this is the 70s." But for the most part, it's so kind of like capable of transcending that.
John Russo. This next bit sort of makes me laugh in a politically incorrect sort of way.
It is kind of, you got this dynamic of what's going on with these characters, haven't you?
Wooly there.
Yeah, Wooly the bully.
Can you imagine a police officer in this day and age using such blatantly racist language?
Oof, I know it's unthinkable, isn't it?
I noticed the audio's different. This is obviously taken from the Argento version. The audio's a bit different. It sounds like the on-set audio. Whereas if you listen to the audio of this scene on the Romero, on either of the Romero versions, it sounds like it was redubbed. It's the same voices, but it sounds different.
I wonder if that's a source issue. Does that happen on the Argento cut or anything like that? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just this scene on the rooftop. Just the voices sound different. It sounds like they re-recorded the lines for the Romero version.
A little hard for me to tell because I've got a crappy little earbud in, but yeah.
Wally's positively enjoying himself.
Yeah. It's I mean, Romero does get very political sometimes. I think it is one of those political things, isn't it? With the characters that are supposed to be the good guys versus.
This is another thing they wouldn't allow these days. That was John Amplas there,
Mm-hmm.
blacked up. Well,
Yeah, a little bit, wasn't
tanned
it?
up to look like a Puerto Rican with a wig. Yeah, I don't think you get away with that these days.
Be a bit harder.
But tell you a few things about the SWAT team here. These gas masks they're wearing, they're actually World War II US Navy gas masks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason they were using these is because the company that manufactured them was actually based in Pittsburgh.
All right.
So I'm assuming they were just easy to get hold of.
Yeah, because they needed a bunch of them, didn't they?
Yeah. Because, I mean, certainly the National Guard wouldn't have been wearing gas masks like that.
No.
Never mind the SWAT team. Oh, now here comes one of my favourite scenes. Oh, yeah. I remember the first time I saw that scene on, cause that was cut out the UK version for years. I think it was 2004 before we finally got that scene uncut.
Yeah, I think I saw a GIF of it before I saw the actual thing.
Yeah. Well, when I first started my website, I used to post horror movie clips on there, and that was one of the first clips I posted. I was posting all the clips that the BBFC had cut out of films. Of course, I don't bother now because there's no point, but yeah, for its time, I thought that was quite good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of people in the UK got to see the exploding head first on my website.
This is a claim to fame.
Yeah. Ken Foray there.
Being very mysterious in his mask.
Yeah. What gets me, not all the SWAT team have got bulletproof jackets on.
Mm-hmm. It was the 70s, so different
odd.
breed.
So like Wooly didn't have one on, which is how come he got shot. This guy doesn't.
Oh, I believe he was an actual amputee, wasn't he?
Yes. They'd actually get some proper, genuine amputees for these scenes, so they could portray them with missing limbs. Yeah, the actual SWAT uniforms in this, they were actually just blue boiler suits.
Yeah. You know,
I think they were US Navy or US Air Force.
They kind of match with
1960s.
They kind of match with the whole kind of because everything copied this, but then you got all kind of like zombie flesh eaters and all that kind of stuff, and the SWAT guys all had those outfits, didn't they? Same hats, same boiler suits. I wonder how many gallons of staged blood and how many explosive squibs they got through making this film. So a lot of it.
Oh yes, this was another scene that was cut originally
For the bites, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Which I never really quite understood.
BBFC had a thing against blood spurts.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they sort of just as it went to bite, they cut it, and then it cut back to a screaming.
Mm-hmm. It's that Goblin soundtrack.
The audio switches between the Romero and the Argento version.
Mm-hmm. It is one thing about this particular cut is that because it's borrowing from so many places, they kind of like had to really sort of fight to get the continuity of the sound. And you will notice it gets a little jarring on occasions. But yeah, I always kind of appreciated the silence in this scene sometimes when with the Romero cut. It gets a little overpowering, just all Goblin.
Another interesting point here, when Scott Reiniger's character runs into the basement here, he's got his mask back on, which he'd taken off earlier, and his bulletproof jacket's now disappeared. Another thing about these uniforms, these ammo belts they've got do not correspond with their guns. I mean, that's an M1 Garand belt he's got around his waist
Mm-hmm.
there. He's got another pistol belt, underneath that.
Mm-hmm. I would not know the difference personally,
Yeah.
and I guess Romero's probably going, oh, hopefully they won't, though. He's American, so you would have thought. But yeah, I guess it was what they could get at the time. So the exploding shotgun head was missing from the UK VHS, but the messy bites were intact. No, the bites were trimmed just for the you'd see the bite start, but it would cut very quickly. So you're talking about like a fraction of a second, essentially, cut from the two bites.
Yeah, I mean the film has been cut to various degrees over the years in the UK. I mean, there was the UK theatrical version was cut, like I said, the blood spurts and the exploding head. After the VRA came in, it was cut back even further. Then when I think it was the early 90s, the director's cut came out. They reinstated the bites, I think, but they still left the exploding head out.
Mm-hmm.
But they shortened the scene of the kids getting shot at the airport for some reason, which was intact in all the other ones.
That
was,
was,
I think that was because
Dunblane, wasn't it? I think it was.
Yeah, that came out shortly after the Dunblane shooting. So,
which is, as much criticism as the BBFC gets, it is one of those sort of things you sort of go, I can kind of understand it. It's unfortunate. I don't necessarily agree, but I can understand why they made that decision.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
The battle, the end battle, and between the bikers and the zombies and all that was all very heavily cut as well.
Oh,
the UK versions.
That whole sequence, yeah, absolutely butchered. He's quite the prophet, that guy, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. That screwdriver in the ear wasn't in the first version I watched.
That was cut out of the British
version, but they trimmed it. You see him get the screwdriver out and go to put it in his ear, and then it cuts. Then when it cuts back, the screwdriver's already in.
Just this bit where they knock the door open through the barricade was cut from most versions.
Well.
You see him go bang, and then there's no pause.
It was Romero trimmed it. Romero edited it so as they knocked the barricade down, the zombies burst through straight away.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Argento version, he put an extra beat in there where it shows the SWAT and the National Guard teams looking in to say, where are they? And then they burst through.
Which makes more sense visually.
It was better without that scene, whereas Argento didn't.
I think it's better with, because it makes no sense without. Just because if you've got a horde of zombies right behind the barricade and how you're knocking it in. Now this scene with the basement, I remember seeing the pictures of it in splatter movies, the book, and just being absolutely kind of like, you're sort of horrified and entranced by these kind of images, and having not seen the movie itself, it was just ever so more potent because of it. I mean, these guys got some plum rolls though, didn't they? Because they're sort of right up front and centre. I think this scene was truncated in the UK version as well.
Well, thing is, yes and no. For the US theatrical version, this scene was shortened, but Argento did a longer version of it, so I don't think it was down to the BBFC.
No.
But I think you're right, maybe some of the gory bits here where they were shooting, and they might have trimmed them a bit.
Yeah, I think there was less shots as well. I think it
Yeah,
was
this
just
whole
kind of,
bit here,
yeah.
this is only in the Argento version. It's not in either of Romero's cuts.
It's almost like half as long, something like that.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit. Another one of the few sort of decisions that Argento made that I think was actually quite good was, I think the extended version of it kind of increases the impact of the scene, because those guys are having to go to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Still respecting dying.
Yeah, how
It's
is that respectful though? You're having all these dead people eating each other.
it's this film does have quite a few really powerful lines, and that one for me actually does work. Yeah, I mean, it seems a little at odds, but they don't want to defile the bodies, if you know what I mean. And it kind of it really sets, his mindset as a character.
There was a gratuitous arm bite in the first version I saw. Yeah, the original UK video release under the title Zombies Dawn of the Dead was the same as the UK theatrical version, which cut the exploding head and a few bits and pieces, but I think some of the arm bites were still intact. However, these were cut from the later releases. As I say, there was like, I mean, I've listed all these cuts somewhere on my Dawn of the Dead review. It's been so long since I've read my own review. Can't quite remember now.
Oh, hello, DC Frank. Good evening.
Yeah, the exploding head was missing from the original UK theatrical version.
Yeah, you just get about a frame of it, and that's about it. It's like it's really brief. See that just this bit, operator dead, post abandoned. He gets an extra cycle of that line, doesn't he, on this version compared to the original cut? I think that was only really in the Cannes cut originally.
Yeah. This bit's all extended from Romero's Cannes cut or whatever.
Yeah.
These well, they're not bogus, are they? Rogue cops or whatever.
Yeah.
They're only featured briefly in the theatrical version, and only in the background.
It's a lot less of the interaction, and certainly their introduction is a little bit less dramatic.
Joe Pilato from Day of the Dead.
Yeah. He's off to run the monkey farm.
Yeah. But yeah, these cops, they're completely cut out of the Argento cut. Not in it at all.
I find his performance is a little eccentric, isn't it? Bullshit, man.
Yeah, he was supposed to be portrayed as a bit of an idiot in this.
Apparently, Wooly is a dead ringer for Mario. Super violent Mario. It's me, I killed you.
Yeah, I think that bit was where he's telling him to, get a move on. I think that was the only scene of the rogue cops that remained in the, in this bit here where he's talking to this guy asking for cigarettes. That was the only bit that was in the US theatrical version.
Yeah, it was definitely heavily truncated.
Yeah, as I say, none of these guys were at all in the Argento cut.
Mm. Yeah, they pretty much cut. If I remember right, it's been a while since I watched it. It pretty much cuts to them arriving or landing and him giving their,
Yeah,
operator dead, da 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 da. Then the others
yeah,
arrive and they pretty much sort of just bugger off, don't they?
yeah. Take off straight away.
Yeah. Oh, you
Yeah, they had a
cheeky
cigarette.
bastards, eh? Cheeky
Smoking
bastards.
while pregnant, though.
I know, it's very 70s. Another little bit of dialogue is added in.
Also, that was a good shot as they take off and you see the building lights blinking off in the background.
Yeah, it's been commented on quite a bit. It's
Yeah,
just quite a fortunate happenstance, isn't it?
yeah, and the music in Romero's cut goes quite well with it too.
Mm. I think when Argento did his, he just wanted to kind of full on rock and roll, didn't he?
Yeah.
See, the funny thing is, Romero really kind of like cut so much bits and pieces, and it was pacing was the largest part of it, I believe. But it's funny, I've never found even the fully extended version of these to kind of feel like it's lingering. I don't think it's ever had any pacing issues as in whatever form. If anything, I'd say like the Argento cut is probably the most exhausting, and it's like the shortest.
Yeah.
He says in the middle of the day.
Yeah. This scene here was where he got George Romero used all his contacts from the local village or whatever it was to get people to come out for him because like the fire crew you see are the actual fire crew, the National Guard are the actual
Mm-hmm.
National Guard, and the police are the real police and stuff.
Is that one of the wonderful things about this kind of filmmaking, though? Because obviously Night of the Living Dead was a huge hit,
Yeah.
and everybody knew who George Romero was by the time this film came out, so everybody wanted to be in it.
Something I want to point out about the National Guardsmen in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It'll in one of the next scenes. Actually, one other thing. This song here, "I'm a Man." I can't remember the name of the band that played it. The name Electric Banana comes to mind, although that might have been a pseudonym they used.
Mm.
It was actually written by Cliff Tremlow, was
Twemlow,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, who did GBH.
Just,
Ah,
I was absolutely tickled when I found that
yeah,
out.
yeah, it surprised me too. The, yeah, the National Guardsmen you saw back there, the ones in the background were actually extras, whereas the ones in the foreground were the real National Guardsmen.
Mm.
And the way you can tell is the ones in the background look like dishevelled students with long hair, plus the helmets they're wearing aren't proper military helmets.
Mm.
They're the actual liners that go inside the helmets.
Yeah, I know
That's
what you
the
mean
national.
because the like the Vietnam era helmets,
Yeah,
it was like a metal shell with a like a fiberglass inner with like kind of webbing.
yeah. The ones with the helmet, the fabric helmet covers, they're the real National Guard, but the ones behind them, with just like the plain helmets, they're actually fiberglass helmet covers. They're not actual the M1 helmets.
You
They're
know,
the covers that go inside them. So
which they sort of carried on doing that kind of stuff. It's a
yeah,
very neat trick. It's a very common trick, I think, but they did that
yeah,
in Day with the zombies. So you had the cheap zombies at the back and the expensive zombies at the front.
yeah.
Because we just seen Jim Crut, the helicopter zombie.
Yeah, he's missing from the Argento version because his head looks ridiculous.
He does have a Frankenstein thing going on, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, Tom Savini said the problem was the wig sort of stuck up. It didn't sit on his head properly. That's why it looks like he's got a flat head there. He said he actually built the head because he has naturally got a flat head, but he built it up to look a bit more round so he could pull it off.
Yeah.
But then when he put the wig on, it wouldn't stick flat to his head. It just stuck up, so it looked like he had a flat head again.
It's the challenges of doing physical makeup effects. It's a crazy game, and the guy was just so amazingly talented at it, but you can't get every win.
Yeah.
It still surprises me though that this feature zombie is cut out. You consider, I mean, you look at some of Argento's stuff. There are some effects which are a little bit wayward and still make it into the movie. But Argento's films in general had a very, very different kind of tone to them anyway. They're almost not horror in some respect. They're more thrillers.
Yeah, very much so.
So the kind of kills and stuff that happen in them tend to be very different, except for maybe in the Supernatural trilogy.
This scene is edited differently in the Romero and the Argento version, with regards to the order of events where Stephen battles the zombie and Peter starts shooting through the door. They appear in sort of like a slightly different order in the two versions.
Yeah. Oh, this is a controversial scene in so many respects with fans of the movie. It's like, why is he such a lame fighter?
Yeah.
But that's part of his arc.
Yeah.
So over the course of the film, says Neil, who is the bigger liability, Stephen or Roger? That's a hard one because they both got their talents. Certainly, Flyboy comes over as being the one that needs a little bit of nannying. I would say it was probably Flyboy, because his character arc goes wrong. Apart from anything else, he goes from being completely inept to thinking he's actually amazing.
Roger, though, here, he becomes a bit of a loose cannon.
He does.
And goes off the deep end and ends up getting bitten by a zombie in the process.
But the only person he gets killed is himself.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, by the way.
Yeah, this scene here with the kids, this was not cut completely, but it was heavily toned down by the BBFC for the director's cut release in the early 90s.
So this actual bit where they shoot the kids is cut down to about like a fifth of.
Oh yeah, you see him run out and he shoves them on the sofa, but then
he fires. You don't see any impact. Yeah,
doesn't show them getting, hit or whatever.
I love the framing of this shot with Flyboy taking his pot shots. It's just a beautiful bit of framing with the zombie doing exactly the same, but getting closer and closer into the camera.
Right, you can see where Peter goes to reload. When he pulls the magazine out, he doesn't sort of like pull out what would normally be a M16 magazine. He pulls out like a smaller mag from the from the middle of it or whatever. It's because these aren't actually proper M16 rifles. They're I forget the name of them, but they're Italian or German copies.
Right.
They're chambered for a 2.2 round.
Okay.
So they have this smaller mag that slots into the bottom of where the regular mag should be.
Oh.
what would be the normal M16 mag is actually part of the rifle.
Mhm.
They have like a separate mag that slots into the bottom of them.
Okay.
You see it. I mean, the scene where he was reloading that's more obvious in the full screen version because you gain on that version you gain a bit more on the top and bottom of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll see him again later when they're in the trucks. You can see the bottoms of the rifles.
Mm-hmm. This always kind of like where he points the gun at Flyboy, and you just get that moment that you're just not quite sure. Well, you can see the decision being made. So do I get rid of this guy that's probably going to get us all killed?
Yeah, I think because that extra scene where he picks him up and pats him on the back, that's not in the original cut of the film. Sorry, that's not in the theatrical version. It's in the director's cut, but not in the theatrical.
Yeah.
And I think the scene actually works better with the extended one. He was just trying to put the wind up him to say, look, be careful where you point your gun. It's very nice. Where he picks him up off the ground and pats him on the back as if to say, right, you've had your talking to. That.
Yeah, I always kind of get that feeling though. He just that look in his eye, and he takes that breath, and it's like kind of you go. He's really kind of for me when I watch it. It's like he's making a decision here, but he is.
I think he was just trying to put the wind up him. And again, if you watch the extended version here, that's certainly the impression you're left with.
Little trivia during the apartment raid at the beginning, a woman gets her arm bitten. The actor who bit her missed the prosthetic and actually bit her arm. Yeah, Tom Savini mentions that in the commentary, and the scream was apparently quite real. She got a good nip.
A similar thing happens during the end battle. One of the bikers, when he bites the prosthetic, he actually bites too hard, and the parts that were supposed to spurt the blood out, you can actually see her in his mouth. So of course no blood spurt. It's just you've got the prosthetic with the pipes in his mouth. But you'll see that later.
I love how the shopping mall has a helicopter pad.
Yeah.
If memory serves,
if you look at the underside of the rifle, you can see there's like another smaller magazine that slots into what looks like the main one.
An adapter.
Yeah.
Yeah. DC says, if memory serves, the kids were Tom Savini's niece and nephew. Yes, that's correct. That's right. Ken Foray was disturbed making that scene.
I knew there was somebody's nephew. The Monroeville Mall, which has since become a sort of mecca for George Romero fans.
They do like kind of dead walks around at certain times of year, don't they?
I think the only store that's still left there is J.C. Penney's, but it's not in the original location. It's a lot smaller and it's been moved. Where J.C. Penney's was, where they filmed this, there's now a multiplex cinema there.
Yes, yeah. Have you ever thought of going?
Not really. Pennsylvania's is not exactly within driving distance.
Excuse my ring pull.
This was dialogue that was reused for the 2004 remake.
A lot of people are much bigger fans of that than I am. I think the more I've watched it, I mean, there's good bits about it. But I think overall this is just by far the superior movie.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the 2004 movie, but as Galen Ross said when I chatted to her about it, she says it's not George, though.
It's very true.
Yeah, it's a good film, but it's not George.
Yeah. Oh, the only cameo she got was the shop sign, wasn't it?
Yes.
Like a lingerie store called Galen Ross. Sorry.
Yeah, Scott Reiniger played a military officer, and Ken Foray was a
Preacher.
evangelical preacher. I
Yeah.
think Tom Savini played a sheriff.
Yes. No Flyboy though.
No. Yeah. Like the pistols they have in this as well. They're supposed to be like Colt 38 police, pistols, but they're actually some imitation gun that's actually chambered for a 2.2 round again.
All right.
I was looking it up on the Internet Movie Firearms database, which is a wonderful source of information for all things, shooty.
Neil says a lot of shopping malls in the UK have helipads on the roof because they're in town centres in case of severe incidents. Best not to ask why I know. I had no idea. So thank you for that. That would make sense, even in this instance. Especially, you consider getting to them is probably quite tricky for an emergency vehicle.
Well, yeah, if there's something gone off and they're using the mall to, shelter people in, they can airlift people out or, transport personnel in. Yeah, always a lot of smoking in these old films.
Yeah, Galen Ross in the commentary says that this movie got her on the smokers list on IMDb or something like that. I don't think she was a smoker at the time, but she just did it for the film. Not too hard to spot zombies in Manchester's hotel.
Yeah, Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, the actual hospital that was filmed at was actually in Manchester, although the film's supposed to take place in the Lake District.
Yeah, it is another one of those Euro horror films that gets very confused with the locations.
Yeah, and it's like as I said in my video I made on the filming locations, it's supposed to be this rural hospital in the middle of nowhere. It's actually sandwiched between about 3 different motorways. There's a slip road. If you look on Google Maps, there's a slip road goes right the way around it.
I mean,
the hospital's still there, by the way, but there's a housing estate been built around it.
Okay.
Because they'd started it when I filmed around there, but the building company went bust, so it was just an empty building. But someone else has taken it over now, and the old hospital is now flats, and the grounds of the hospital are now a housing estate. You can look it up on Google Street View. You can go around the estate on it.
Oh, you'll have to send us details of the locations at some point. That would be kind of interesting to do.
I'll post it on Ramblaholics.
Yeah. I know one of the things there's a commonality between between that film and this film is just the use of locations is just magnificent, and it's one of the things with Manchester Morgue that I always thought was just incredible because it's unusual for a non-British director to have such a, shall we say, sensitivity to what makes those locations English, I guess. George Romero is very good at locations because he usually because of lack of choice to some degree. But what he does with this location in this film and the amount of work everybody had to do to make it functional as a movie set is just mind blowing. And he constantly demonstrated that with Night of the Living Dead. He did that because it's a very small location. This he did. It's a very big location, but it's a very tight location in some respects. And then Day of the Dead as well. Absolutely made the most you could possibly make of that space. It was very, very, very good with locations. It's underappreciated aspect in a film.
Yeah, this is one thing the Argento version lacked, the more music.
Yes.
I mean, he had its own, soundtrack, but I like the stop music used.
It feels right to me, and I don't think it's just
Yeah.
because it's the first version I saw. I think there is a sense of kind of, I guess, for want of a better word, whimsy that is being generated about this place. It is a place of kind of shallowness, I guess. If you go along with the kind of commentary that the film is supposed to have. So the big hardcore rock and roll sort of soundtrack just feels a little bit out of place in a lot of respects to me.
Yeah, yeah. Like
It's
I say, soundtrack wise, my favourite cut is the theatrical version, which has the nice mix of stop music and
yeah.
Argento music.
I think you got the balance right. Now it's not too, when I speak for you, I guess a little bit here, I'm probably out of turn, I guess, but we love the Goblin stuff. It is amazing. But
Yeah.
I think in more selected and more kind of carefully chosen positions, it works so much better. It's because, like, for this scene, you've gone straight from that stock music or the kind of like the very cheesy sort of stuff to this kind of action theme.
Yeah.
And it makes more of an impact when that kicks in for me.
And it's gone to the Argento music now.
Yeah.
Or Goblins, should I say.
So during during this scene, there's a lot of bits that were cut from the British versions, mostly with the kind of close-ups of the headshots and stuff like that we've just seen there. A lot of that stuff got cut out.
As I recall, I think the first attempt at doing a, complete composite version of, with all the different footage in was by Astro Video, I think. It also was released on DVD by Red Edition, but it was German language only. And it was very crudely spliced together. It's like the music would just jump cut.
Was that called
At
the
least
extended mall hours?
Versions.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Was that the extended mall hours version?
Well, it was called the Ultimate Final Cut.
Right.
On the Red Edition, but it was German language only, and like I say, it was very crudely done.
This is, for the versions that I've seen of the extended films, actually quite a well done one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have tried to smooth the change of music over a little bit, so it's not quite so obvious.
It's not 100%, but it's pretty close.
Yeah,
like I say, I mean,
it smooths the transition, but the Red Edition it just jump cuts.
Yeah,
so it's very crude.
I mean, it was essentially a fan edit, wasn't it? So, but back in those days, not everybody had like access to a nice edit suite and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the Red Edition version, it wasn't an official version, but it was done by the German or Austrian distributor or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose you could count it as semi-official, but even so, it wasn't brilliant. It was just really, one for completists only.
Kerry's back in the house.
Yep, right, Kerry. Not too hard to spot zombies in Manchester's Arndale Centre. Well, that's certainly true. Yeah, meant to comment on that earlier, but we got sort of sidetracked talking about stuff.
I think this bit, because they're running around in that place and they bump into the mannequins and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That worked better with the Romero soundtrack. There's something about the Goblin soundtrack in that scene that sort of diminishes that kind of sudden impact of Oh shit! Oh no, I'm all right. Of course, you can exchange.
I wonder how many Dawn fans tried to do that sliding down the escalator thing before they
Didn't
turned it
Scott
into a multiplex
Reiniger
cinema.
didn't Scott Reiniger kind of like say that he felt probably that he was partially responsible for the introduction of the bumps and stuff that go down those things so you can't slide.
Yeah, probably. I saw some idiot tried to slide down the middle of an escalator on London Underground, and we
Oh
had those bumps in the middle. It did not end well for
no,
him.
I can't imagine it would.
Well, you always get one bloody idiot, don't you?
You'd be doing a fair old lick down the bottom of that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Uh-oh, he's got a gun. But it's a good little scene, this, in that, it's the first sort of inkling that Flyboy isn't a complete and utter imbecile. He is a smart guy. He's just not very adept at looking after himself.
Yeah. He doesn't know a lot about guns.
Kerry says, with your glasses down, you kind of look like a kindly teacher.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, unfortunately, to read the small print and small stuff up close, I have to wear reading glasses now. I mean, long distance vision's fine. I can sit here and quite happily read the subtitles on the TV or whatever. That's not a problem. But when it comes to reading stuff up close, got to wear specs now.
Minty says, I've kept coming back to this film for years and it never loses its appeal. No, this is a film I could literally, every week I could shove this film on and enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed, all three of, Romero's original Dead trilogy, but I think Dawn was the one that, I loved the most.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Day of the Dead had more gore and more zombies and, was a lot bleaker or whatever, and had a good setting being set underground in this bunker or wherever it was, but I don't know why. So Dawn is the one I always keep coming back to.
It is the fun one. There's a lot of
Yeah.
fun in Day of the Dead, but it is a much bleaker feeling film. The endless ricochet.
Yeah. A bit of trivia for you. New York City police, when they're on the underground, they use hollow point bullets. The reason being is if they shoot and miss, when they hit the wall, they don't ricochet, they just shatter.
Mm.
The only trouble is when they do hit, they cause a hell of a mess.
I think it's actually quite common for US police, actually, because the bullet doesn't travel through as much. It's a safety thing, funny enough.
Yeah, but hollow point bullets, when they hit you,
Yeah, they
my
break.
God, do they cause a hell of a
Oh,
mess.
yeah. They're messy. They're messy.
But they don't ricochet, they shatter, so...
To be fair, most people would not really automatically adapt to the world of this film. It takes some time, and even then, many would simply not adjust. No, funny enough, I think that's been demonstrated to us over recent history. There's a lot more headshots in this sequence as well.
Well, a chap I knew, he actually studied forensic science at university. And I was asking him how long does it take for a body to decompose in sort of like average mild weather, and he said pretty much, I think he said 30 days or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, all you'd really have to do in a zombie apocalypse is just stockpile the kitchen, barricade the front door or whatever, and just wait for like 30 odd days, and the eyes would have rotted by that time. So even if they were still mobile, they wouldn't be able to see you.
I think they
And
sort of
the muscles would all rot out, so
yeah.
they'd be able to chase after you anyway.
I think they sort of address it in Day of the Dead, don't they? If I remember right, that when the zombification kind of kicks in, it slows down a lot of the processes. That's kind of what part of Logan's experiments was figuring that stuff out. So there's an in-world answer to that, but you don't know it at this point. Always remember that.
So Kerry, you're short-sighted then. I'm long-sighted.
Always remember that scene of him running up to the door and shutting the door from the trailer.
Here comes the screwdriver scene. I did post a link on Rambleholics to a Japanese dubbed version of this, and it's hilarious to watch. I think it's a TV version because there's like commercial break edits in it, and it seems to be missing out several scenes due to time. But the dubbing on it is hilarious. It really is. And they use their own music and everything.
I'm gonna have to check that because I don't think I got round to checking that.
Yeah, it's on the Rambleholics page. He didn't slide down this time.
I think he's feeling a little bit less jovial. Oh, run, Flyboy!
Consultant for 28 days later. I wish.
I love it on the commentary where they're taking the piss out of David Emge's running.
There's several different commentary tracks for this. The one that was on the Laserdisc that was George and Tom Savini, I don't think that's on the Blu-ray or the DVDs. And there's another commentary track which was on the UK DVD.
Mm-hmm.
The first UK DVD was cut slightly. It missed out the exploding head, and there was one other scene as well. I forget which.
The
then
children.
They reissued it uncut.
Yeah.
But that had I think it was Tom Savini and Tasso Stavrakis or somebody. But again, that one's not any of the current Blu-ray releases. But someone's very kindly uploaded them to YouTube if you hunt around.
It's quite reassuring, isn't it?
Just reading Collector Adams' post here. After 30 days, people decompose. After just 5 days, they become avid viewers of loose women. Yeah. Say that about a lot of shows. I mean, Big Brother drives me up a fucking wall.
I can't sit in front of the telly for more than about 10 minutes. It just rots my brain.
Yeah, must admit I tend to watch more, stuff online these days. It's very rarely I watch anything on telly. I still watch Blu-rays and DVDs and stuff, but
Yeah, speaking of which, I've just managed to hook my PS3 up and get it up and running so I can play my Blu-rays again. It's been a bit of an adventure trying to settle in again.
Yeah.
Grown Big Brother, yes.
Yeah, I've never got that show. I just couldn't understand the appeal. It's like you sat in your house watching people sat in a house.
Richard, we are current.
Arguments. I went, I get that down the pub on a Saturday night or at work. People interacting and arguing with each other over trivial things. I don't need to watch TV programs about it.
Richard, we are at 58 minutes and just coming up to 50 seconds.
remember rightly, the scene with the lift was actually filmed at J.C. Penney's, but the bit on top of the lift was filmed at George Romero's
A
studios or
latent image,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because I don't think they would have wanted them kind of screwing around on top of a lift. I love the bit where he's going through all the tools and stuff. I can just imagine in his head he's going, Phillips screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, zombie killing screwdriver. uh, Film world air ducts. They just
Yeah, in reality,
you'd either fall through
you wouldn't
them
be
or
able
you'd be
to
making
fall
a hell
through
of a
them.
noise, and they would be absolutely caked up to the nines with dust after 2 feet.
Yeah. John McClane wouldn't have been able to move around inside them.
Though, to be fair to that movie, although it looks pristine when he's crawling through it, by the time he gets through the other end of it, he's almost black with dirt.
Yeah. I know in Aliens, where they filmed the scene where they're crawling through the air ducts at the end, if you look, they're actually just going around in circles.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was at a studio, it was some air ducting at a studio, or whether it was actually a set or whatever, but they just had this little section that just kept going round and round and round in circles in.
It's what
If you look,
happens.
they keep turning right all the time.
It's what happens when you follow an 8-year-old.
Yeah. Only one thing, Ken Foray, having met him in person, he really is surprisingly tall.
I didn't think he was anything other than that. He's always come across as being, I mean, what is he, about 6'4"?
Something like that. I mean, Scott Reiner's just a little bit taller than me, but Ken Foray really is quite an imposing character.
It's funny, isn't it? Because Ken's like has always taken the piss out of Scott for his height.
Yeah.
It's like I love his. He could just constantly his story of him constantly tormenting Scott on the way to set by singing "Short People." Come on, it's fireworks night. Why are you shying away?
That's something we don't have over here, road flares.
You can get it for like ships and stuff, like boating.
Yeah, in America you can pick them up at any auto parts store, but over here you can't.
Yeah.
Too many miscreants will probably
I guess
set
it's
fire to things with them.
I guess it's to do with the fact that they've got so many really, really long remote roads. But yeah, they do seem to be a big thing over there. I think it's just because, you know, the whole kind of trouble with getting fireworks in America, oddly enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. You can't buy fireworks over there, but you can buy guns.
It's such a potent image, isn't it, the Hare Krishna zombie? It's just one of those first things that you think about with this movie. Hello, Richard.
Yeah, Richard.
He says, brains.
And Brian.
Of course, the whole kind of brains thing was Return of the Living Dead, but
Yeah,
which
that's
unofficial
where the whole thing
sequel.
about zombies eating brains comes from. It's Return of the Living Dead. Here, they just eat human flesh.
Which was, you know, Return of the Living Dead is I say unofficial sequel, but it's a sequel, kind of like a different world from Night of the Living Dead by
Yeah.
Russo. And if you've ever read the book, the film and the book are very, very, very different.
I was going to say, a mate of mine had the book, and he said it's completely different to how the film was.
There's very, very little. I think they literally just took the mortuary idea, and that was about it.
Well, I know they did that. There was that Children of the Living Dead, which somebody did, which was supposed to be another sequel to it. And oh, dearie me, even the director disowned it, and he pointed the finger squarely at the producer who financed it. He just said, "Look, she insisted on using all these university students, who didn't know, who couldn't, didn't know how to work a camera properly. They had John Russo on there, who's a really nice guy, but shouldn't be let within 100 miles of a camera." He goes, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's a complete amateur. And what was else he said? He said he actually had a professional cameraman that was prepared to fly out, as a favour to him and work for half his normal rate. And the producer just wouldn't have it. He goes, no, we're using these, we're students or whatever, because she thought they'd be cheaper. And he just said it was an absolute shit show, pardon language.
That film always reminds me of Savage Vengeance in some ways. It's got the same kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, even Tom Savini said, the film he signed up for wasn't the film that came out on DVD or whatever. He said he's wished he never got involved. In fact, even John Russo's, distanced himself from it, even though the director said half the problems are his fault. Even he said the producer was a clown.
Kerry says fireworks are illegal in Ireland, but not in the north. I did not know that.
Fireworks are illegal in Ireland, but not in Northern Ireland. You'd have thought that would be the first place they would be illegal, given the troubles they had over there. But is it better than Birdemic? Arguably not. Although if you've seen Birdemic 3, that film is appalling.
Oh, I think the sequels were just like the director going, okay, I'll run with the making a bad movie thing, and then second you start doing that deliberately.
The third film's the worst of the bunch. I mean, I saw it at the Mayhem Festival in Nottingham, and even the guys that were running the festival said, some filmmakers most filmmakers tend to get better with each film. He goes, this director seems to be getting worse. Even they knew it was terrible, but it was being released by Severin Films, and their mates were Severin. So, I mean, to be fair, it was good for a giggle. The festival crowd loved it.
You see, with some of George Romero's other films, like, have you watched The Amusement Park?
Yeah, that was a weird one.
It is a weird one, and there's always vanilla. And there's
didn't like that. That was more of a melodrama.
Yeah, I mean, even George Romero kind of like went, it wasn't really my film, but you can always tell there's Romero in there. But even with his really early stuff, kind of pre-Night of the Living Dead, the shorts and all that kind of stuff that you see, you can see his sort of progress getting better and better. And within the Dead trilogy in its own right, you see that increase in skill with direction and the writing, and some people thought it was a step backward day. I don't think it was. It was just a very differently toned film. Bleak ass film.
Yeah, Birdemic makes you want to throw your Blu-ray player out of the window. Yeah, I'll go with that. Oh yeah, Richard, R.I.P. Carl Weathers. We were on about that earlier. Also, I've heard that Annie Bell from House on the Edge of the Park and Absurd has passed away. Yeah, because we lost Tisa Farrow a few weeks back.
Yeah.
I think John Morgan died last year.
Did he? Oh, yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, Giovanni Lombardo Radice, or whatever his name is. Always known as John Morgan.
Giovanni Lombardo Radice.
That's it.
Gotta say it with the Italian flair. He was awesome. Still smoking, even though she's still pregnant.
Yeah. Don't think that thing would wash these days.
This scene was in the trailer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the trouble with high def. It's like the zombie makeup was essentially just, grey face paint.
Mm.
And it probably looked all right when it was on the screen and on video, but in high def, you can see where it's smudged around the eyes and bits they've missed.
Yeah. It's the Star Trek effect, isn't it? It's like when
Yeah.
they did the next gen and they kind of like did a high def version of it, and it's like suddenly you could see all the seams on the costumes.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think they went particularly too far with most of the high def versions on this. They've been pretty sensitive to a lot of the a lot of the look of the film. They haven't over color corrected it or anything.
Forget the name of that actor with the eye patch, the scientist guy, but he was also in the Crazies, wasn't
Yeah.
he?
Richard something. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of popped up in Romero's films time and time again, I think.
Yeah. You often find that, people that have been in one of his films tend to pop up in another.
Yeah, it's a small filmmakers kind of thing, though, isn't it? Whether it's John Carpenter or George Romero or any number of them, they tended to have almost a family of people that it would get together to make these things.
Yeah. The TV host with the curly hair kind of looks like a Scouser, doesn't he? Yeah, better watch my sense of humour here because I don't want to upset anyone. I'm notorious for opening my mouth and putting my foot in it.
Well, at least he's still flexible enough to do that.
Yeah. Oh, Neil prefers Day of the Dead to Dawn of the Dead. Well, each to their own.
You don't have to be say contrarian. There are a lot of people who do really celebrate Day over Dawn. It's as much because although they're films from the same family, they are very different films in terms of kind of like how they play. Both have serious stuff, but I think Day is a very very dark film when it comes to the character's humanity. Whereas this is always this sense of hope and a bit of gung ho and there's a bit of fun about it.
Yeah.
Day doesn't have nearly as much of that. There's humour, but it's kind of much more spaced out.
Just reading Kerry's comment here. Calm down, calm down.
Like the Crazies too, both versions. In fact, yes, we were just talking about that earlier. In fact, I do prefer the original. I like the documentary film kind of feel, if you know what I mean. It's not strictly speaking in that kind of way, but it feels much more like that than the remake. But the remake is a hell of a ride and very respectful of the original, which is always a good thing. And it does its own thing, which is kind of important. It has a point to existing.
Yeah, because I was saying you earlier, wasn't I? I think the Crazies does hold up remarkably well still after all these years.
As lo-fi as it is, as well,
Yeah.
and it is a rough and ready film in comparison to George Romero's career in many other respects. Even compared to something like Knight Riders, which is a pristine
Yeah.
film, it is very very lo-fi. But that's kind of why I feel it has that sort of documentary feel. Almost, it's almost like guerrilla filmmaking.
Yeah, I was just checking because there was that film, The Cassandra Crossing, which I think starred Richard Harris, which was about an outbreak on a train,
Yeah, I've just
and all
picked
these
that up.
government, troops wearing similar hazmat suits go on it. I
Mm.
mean, the crazies predated that by at least 3 years.
Mm. Yeah, I just picked that up on DVD recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I seem to be on a bit of a disaster movie jag at the moment. Picked that up and Earthquake and The Swarm. The Swarm's terrible, but
Oh yes, Michael Caine
yeah,
and Millions of Bees.
constantly yelling at people. You don't want to kill the bloody bees. Not these bees, not the American bees, just the Africans.
Yeah, I always quite like this sequence where they're blocking the mall entrances with the trucks.
Mm-hmm. It kind of gives you an idea of the scale of the place.
Yeah.
I like the banter as well. Although the close-ups on the truck always do look like there's a crew rocking it.
Yeah.
But you get the same with the helicopter thing. But it's like, well, how else do you do it? And yeah,
Nice of the zombies to put a nice big gap,
mm.
for them to drive down the middle of, so none of them gets run over.
I have to say though, I do respect George Romero for not kind of needlessly putting people in harm's way.
Yeah.
Like, he's too nice a guy to risk people's lives to make a film.
This is a bit where Roger starts to get a little too overconfident.
Mm. I mean, it's been people sort of comment on kind of like, why is his character quite like that? Because he's sort of this Vietnam vet type, and some people sort of
Yeah.
like equate his behaviour to almost like a fake bravery to some degree, being so cocky and gung ho that he's overcompensating somewhat. But it's one of the things. I mean, that character really does kind of link into the film's kind of ideas of what the zombies are and what they represent. Is exactly what he falls victim to. Is that the zombies themselves aren't particularly a threat. It's not, they're slow. You can literally walk around them a lot of the time. But it's when you let your guard down, when you become overconfident, that's when it comes and bites you on the arse. Literally. Reckon William Friedkin would have shrugged off the odd extra being run down in his thing, yes he would.
Probably.
I mean, I love Friedkin's movies, but he was desperately irresponsible on quite a few occasions. Although I gained a lot of respect for him when I saw him do an interview on the French Connection, and he was talking about the chase scene. Because for those who don't know, basically they hadn't fully closed off the road for that, so there was people around, people who were unaware of what was going on, and they still filmed it. And he was in the interviews like, I'm like, well, I definitely wouldn't do that these days. It's just not how you should do these things. I was like, oh, thank you. Probably bothered me.
You could get away with that sort of thing back then.
Mm.
There weren't as many cars on the roads for a
Yeah.
start.
But it's all too easy for it to be another John Landis situation, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah, yeah, I know what you're on about. What was it? Twilight Zone film you're on
Twilight
about,
Zone.
aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. Helicopter crashing
Yeah. Oh my God,
on the set.
footage of that's actually turned up online.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. Although I mean, it's not like you can see much. Helicopter comes down and you just see this
Yeah,
mist basically from because it lands on the water, but you just see the three actors, Vic Morrow and the two kids, just disappear in this explosion of water. Yeah, and I hate to see that. No film's worth that.
yeah. I'm surprised he never went to jail.
You got very lucky. It's that look in his eyes when he does that.
Probably would have had a car chase through the mall. Well, John Landis did that on Blues Brothers, didn't he?
Yeah, I hate to see that kind of stuff on a film set. I mean, obviously the current example is Rust.
Oh God, yeah. I think he's just been charged again, hasn't he?
Yeah, yeah, and it's totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
Filmmaking should be fun, for the most part, and it should be safe. It's make believe at the end of the day.
Tom Savini about to get run
Yep.
over. There we go. And if you
It's the bit
look
he,
really closely, you can see the
yeah,
trampoline that he used to launch himself off just before the lorry hits.
which he constantly laments. He says every time he sees this, he sees that bloody trampoline. It's like literally it's about 2 frames.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally as blink and you miss it. In fact,
Mhm.
I think it was probably more visible on the full screen version. But even so, it's once seen cannot be unseen.
But I mean, far from it detracting from the movie for me. I love that sometimes the process comes through a little bit, just a little bit. I'm sure these days you just CG it all out and all that kind of stuff, but there's something organic about these older movies.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And
Didn't
talking
the,
about older movies, I'll take a lot of the old 70s car chase movies over stuff like The Fast and the Furious any
Oh, I
day.
mean, no, the French Connection for all the kind of what I've just said about it. That
Yeah,
chase scene is
Vanishing
incredible.
Point.
Richard says, didn't the guy from GBH have a part in this film or did the stunts? No, he did. He did the song "I'm a Man" or wrote it, which is in the National Guard scene. We had a chat about that a little bit earlier. It's like, yeah, just climb in the fucking truck, you
Yeah,
lunatic.
what do you think you're doing, you nana?
And this is really the bit that people sort of like kind of look at and go, it's almost a PTSD thing with Roger, that he's just absolutely lost focus.
Yeah.
I love it. Galen Ross basically says at this point that's like she loves watching this in the cinema because it's at that point everybody starts cheering for her character.
Oh, Train to Busan, that's a good one.
I've not seen that. I know, surprising me, a film that I haven't seen. Remember watching an old episode of Knight Rider. Hasselhoff was driving and doing a stunt, but you can see a third hand on the handbrake. So, as Simon said, what's seen? I mean, seriously, why go back into the truck? Just go back into the store. You've got hundreds and hundreds of screwdrivers. It's like climb on the fucking roof.
Ouch.
Yeah. I love how the zombie with a gun just keeps turning up throughout the entire movie in the background and stuff like that.
If you look, it's the same sort of like 5 or 6 lead zombies and the same ones throughout that keep turning up in the foreground. All the zombies that get shot and somehow they manage to avoid it.
It's character shield.
Yeah.
That's an extra bit of dialogue in this. Damn right I can, damn right. Can you walk on it? Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's in the extended cut or the Argento
Don't
cut.
think it is in the extended. It might be in the Argento.
Yeah, Grandmaster, we were talking about Living Dead at Manchester Morgue earlier. Yeah, it's a good film.
Yeah, and there is something creepy. It is a very atmospheric film. I totally agree. It's got a very dark tone to it. It doesn't take an awful lot of time out for humour.
Now, this gun store, this wasn't actually in the mall. This was actually filmed somewhere in Philadelphia.
Mm.
You know, they just had to film this scene of them jumping through a ceiling, and then they cut it with them landing in 2 completely different locations.
The magic of cinema, eh?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I always love the soundtrack in the background. The music's playing.
Obviously, that bit with the zombies looking through the grate, that's filmed at the mall, but them in the gun shop somewhere completely different. Like you say, that's just the magic of movie making.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually quite a nice, concise sort of insight into the process, isn't it? It just, when you start realising those kind of things, how many things you have to plan, the pickup shots and all the kind of, all those sorts of things that have to go into a movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's like going off on a slight tangent here. I don't know if you're familiar with the old war movie, One of Our Aircraft is Missing, but a lot of that was filmed around my neck of the woods in Lincolnshire.
Okay.
And, or, you know, that sort of area. And there's one scene where they're actually driving around what's supposed to be a town in Holland, but it starts off in King's Lynn, then they go around a corner, and they're driving through a road in Boston, where I live. Then they turn another corner and they're in King's Lynn again. Then they turn another corner and they're back in Boston. It's happened several times because I recognise the Boston locations, and I was like, well, where the hell are these other streets? I don't recognise those. And someone said, oh, I think they filmed part of it in King's Lynn. So I went on Google Street View, and lo and behold, all these other shots were filmed in King's Lynn. So it's like the
Yeah.
in between shots are dark in between Boston and King's Lynn.
That's definitely one of those things that go back to that whole kind of like once seen, you can't unsee it sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you're not familiar with the area, you don't know, and it works
Mm.
fine. But it's like if you're familiar with the area, it's like, hang on, that's not from round here.
But the people that worked in this mall probably felt the same when they saw this movie.
Yeah.
It's probably, well, that doesn't exist.
Well, it's like J.C. Penney's, which is the main shop that features throughout this. Um, the way they filmed it, it looks like it's at the end of the mall. It's actually right in the middle.
Mm.
But a lot of the shops didn't want to be seen in the film. Couldn't get permission to use, the front of their shops, and they had to film around it. So the way this was shot, it looks like this is at the end, one end of the mall, when it's actually in the middle.
Mm. Tool shed. Workshop.
At the shopping mall for a haircut or a hat, why not buy a gun as well? Well, only in America. I mean, Walmart sell guns, don't they?
Yes, they do. The Brown Derby is a steaky love pub, says Blue Iris. It does evoke images, doesn't it? That's the place that all the zombies in full makeup would go to get pissed after filming.
Yeah. I think, isn't there a story that a couple of drunken zombies took they had these golf carts that the crew used to ride round in from getting from one end of the mall to the other, and a couple of drunken zombies stole one of the golf carts and went for a drunken drive around the mall late one night. And they crashed into one of the pillars, and it's like marble cladding on the outside of these pillars. They cracked all the marble. It's on one of the commentary tracks. I forget which one now, but
I think they were more concerned about it when they do the motorcycle chase and stuff like that for later, didn't they? But they were relatively well behaved. But I do like the idea because they filmed most of this at night, because obviously the shops are open during the day and the public are in during the day, so they would shoot it overnight. And before the main shops opened and all that kind of stuff, they would have the old folks come in for a bit of exercise because it's warm and it's temperature controlled in the space, so they could go for exercise and long walks around this place. And they were just worried about zombies coming around the corner when there's people with weak hearts coming in opposite direction.
well, that was certainly the case in the remake, anyway. There was like a yoga class that started at 6 o'clock in the morning when the doors first opened, and there was all these pregnant women going in there for their, their exercise or whatever. And of course, there's all these zombies walking around, and people covered in blood. Like, what the hell?
Oh, so painful looking.
Oh God, yeah. That was another bit that was cut from the
Those blood
UK
spurts.
version.
Yeah. I love that there was a debate about does the nun live? Because when they were filming it, they were like kind of like, do we kill the zombie nun, or do we let her go? And George made an executive decision.
Even though technically the nun was already dead.
Yeah, no, still.
This person hanging onto the back of the car, which Stephen shoots there, that was actually Tasso Stavrakis, one of the stuntmen.
Yeah, it's
Obviously,
quite.
they filmed the actress who was originally made up like that, hanging onto the back. But then as the car drove off, they switched to the stuntman.
And as brief as it is, it's bloody obvious, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, again, if you just watch it for the first time on
Mm,
VHS or something, or you're just at the cinema, you probably wouldn't notice it. But like rewatching it on Blu-ray or whatever
mm.
now, it's in HD. It's like, yeah, that's not the same person.
The bit where the hand comes off in the door and stuff like that wasn't in the original version either, I don't think. Uh, but it's kind of it is one of the janky effects, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because it suddenly the zombies sort of like come apart like that easy.
yeah. Again, I'm not sure. I don't think it was in the theatrical version. It might have been in the extended version.
I think it was in extended.
Yeah. That's the trouble. It's like there's been so many releases of this film over the years,
Yeah.
in different versions and with different bits edited out. It sort of all becomes a bit of a blur. I know Anchor Bay in America, their first DVD release of this, it was supposed to be the theatrical version, but it actually had several scenes from the director's cut peppered throughout it. Obviously, they edited it together wrongly.
Yeah. See, that's the thing, because I mean, but when I first sort of saw the original, I say original release, the '90s release of in the UK, and there were so many bits that were cut out though, and with like this whole sequence and the finale, just absolutely decimated in terms of cuts. And I'd seen shots of it in books and magazines and all that kind of stuff. And my joy of actually watching it the first time in its, the canned cut, was quite something. Just finally seeing that stuff in context. Such an odd scene, this bit, isn't it? It's oddly serene.
Yeah, this stock music used here turned up in a load of films.
It's always a risk, though, isn't it? You use something like that, and then other films end up using it. And for the people who use it subsequently,
Yeah.
suddenly any audience that's aware it gets taken out of your movie's world.
Mm.
So if you watch a YouTube video and the creators use some stock music, but that's been used in a completely different video that you've watched, it's like, oh, now I recognise that. And suddenly you're not there anymore.
Yeah.
Quick to the DIY store. So it's a good job there's a B&Q on site.
That's one thing I noticed when he says, "Oh, I've never seen anyone last more than 3 days after a bite." Well, when they did Land of the Dead, they says, "Oh, you've only got a few hours after being bitten." I thought, well, hang on, that goes against what was said in Dawn and Day.
Land was always an odd beast for me. I think I've got to watch it again. I've seen it probably about 3 or 4 times, compared to probably about 30 times with this movie. But it has such a wildly different feel to it, and I've always sort of attributed that to it being the much larger world. And what I said about Day of the Dead earlier with the original vision, which you can download the script for the original vision, and it's
Oh yeah,
yeah, so it's all kind of, there's a lot more above ground in this sort of much more open environment. But George, for me, has always worked better with these smaller worlds, these tighter confinements. And Land is such a bigger picture, so much a big picture, that it always felt a little bit odd.
My main problem I had with Land of the Dead was the ending. The film just seemed to abruptly stop. It looked like it was going to build to this massive climax, and all of a sudden it just ended. It's like, oh, okay. It's like there's zombies rampaging through the city or whatever, and they're trying to rush back with, that big armoured, vehicle or whatever.
The Dead
to save
Reckoning.
everyone.
Yeah.
And they get there, blow a few zombies up, and that's the end of the film. Like, oh, that's it then. I was expecting a load of mass carnage there, and it
It's been years since I've seen the film. I've got to watch it again now.
isn't there a Diary of the Dead? Yes, but that was not connected to the original Night of the Living Dead. It was its own thing. And there was a Survival of the Dead which followed on from Diary.
They're sort of crossover.
Well,
there's a bit
there's
in
Night, Dawn, Day, and Land. They're direct.
They're the big
direct sequels to one another, filmed a few years apart. But Diary and Survival, they're their own separate canon. Post-it note of the dead.
Holiday of the Dead. It's where they all turn up at Butlins.
Would anyone notice the difference? Going off on another tangent, what you said about Butlins and that, where they filmed Holiday on the Buses, which was a branch of Pontins, I believe.
Yeah.
Apparently that camp's now closed.
Yeah.
It's still open up until last year, but they say they're not going to reopen again. So
I
that's
think
another filming location gone.
I think a lot of the Pontins just went away, didn't it? And the whole company's collapsed, as far as I understand it.
Cheap holidays abroad.
Yeah. Any American viewers here probably have no idea what the hell we're rabbiting on about here. But
British holiday camps.
Yeah.
Very popular in the 1950s. Centre Parks, they seem to be doing all right, but they're more for the middle class types. Butlins and Pontins, they were more for us working class types, shall we say.
Yeah, the music on this is kind of weird, isn't it? This section, because in the theatrical cut, it's all kind of stock music, and it's like really cheerful, kind of cheesy stuff. Just absolutely counterpoints what's going on with them hauling dead bodies into the freezers and stuff. And on this, it's like a soulful guitar.
Holiday of the Dead on the Buses. Yeah, again, they keep switching between stop music and the stuff used for the Argento version.
Well, I say, it doesn't feel as jarring as it does on some of the supercuts.
Yeah, they have tried, like I said, they have tried to smooth over the transition between the different music between scenes on this. But, like I say, that German DVD I got.
It's hack and slash, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, this ice rink's no longer there. Apparently, it's a food court now.
I love the fact that Galen Ross had to lie on her CV about being able to skate.
Galen Ross is actually a stage name, apparently. I think that's right. Because what got me was she did this, and then she went and did the film Madman, which was like a 80s slasher film. But she's credited under a real name on that. You'd have thought they'd have credited her as Galen Ross from Dawn of the Dead, but no.
There's
Yeah,
sometimes a
Madman, that's a fun film.
yeah. Oh, it's a while since I've seen that.
Yeah.
Assume it's the one I'm thinking of. One of the
Another Friday the 13th rip-off.
yeah. Was it on one of the lists?
It wasn't on the Video Nasties list. It might have been on
Might have been
the
on section
Section 3
3.
list. I can't
Yeah,
remember off the top of my head.
I think it's the section 3.
Yeah, it was very hard to get hold of for a number of years. I know
Oh, I got about 2 or 3 films out with the wrong film to start with when we're trying to find it.
Well, I remember watching it round my mate's house for his 12th birthday party. He rented out a load of horror movies. Remember seeing that one, Galaxy of Terror, and I forget what the other one was we watched.
I love these old arcade games.
Oh, God. Boot Hill, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, old Space Invaders and...
That racing game, I swear I've played that.
Yeah, back in the late 70s, early 80s.
It's also one of those things, wasn't it, with the arcades and stuff, because in Britain they generally were at the seaside.
Yeah.
So whenever you went to the seaside, most people of my age at the time would be spending more time in the arcade than we would on the beach.
Mm.
Battle Zone and all that kind of stuff. I love this conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with George Romero's writing, he always takes time for the characters to reflect and sort of bring the audience along with them.
Classic line.
Bit better than when there's no more room in hell, the earth will spit out the dead.
Yeah. No, it's when the earth spits out the dead, they will return to tear the flesh from the living.
Well, that was another one, though, but I'm sure there was
That was on the poster.
Yeah.
But in the film, the line was, they will return to suck the blood from the living.
Yeah. They weren't ripping off at all, were they? You gotta love.
The HS cover for Galaxy Terror was fantastic. Yes, it was. Who can forget the scene where the woman is attacked by a giant maggot or whatever it is, which rips off her uniform and tickles her to death and covers her in slime?
Not at all a
Galaxy Terror is a
euphemism.
surprisingly good film, though. I mean, like I say, it's got Robert Englund in it and Ray Walston.
Mm. Robert Englund, I mean, he's played some seriously sleazy characters, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, the
He's
first
been in a hell of a lot of horror films over the years.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. He's been a hard worker. I love the chemistry between these two characters.
Yeah.
You can mockingly call it a bromance, but it's sort of, they care for each other, and it's really kind of obvious. See, this is one of the bleak things about it, isn't it? It's like, you've got no choice. It's like it's not something you can do shag all about. It is amazing, isn't it? Really, the just how much detail there is in the film in kind of stuff like that. That even in this super extended version, it's very little wasted screen time. Excuse me. Blue Iris says George Romero co-wrote the novelisation of this film, though the writing wasn't the best. I'd kind of agree, but I did really enjoy reading the novel. It is a very different thing writing a screenplay to a novel. And I think there was some details in it. It's been such a long time since I read it, but there's some details in the book that really kind of sort of flesh out things that happen on the screen.
I've got the book somewhere.
I'd love to see if there's an audiobook version of it, actually. That could be fun. Could be fun. George Romero so often has those kind of like that kind of terrifyingly logical characters, doesn't he?
Yeah.
The ones that are pragmatic to the point of insanity. It's, yeah, drop nukes on them. That is some great makeup on him.
Well, that was a bit of a downer.
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of quiet for it, and it's quiet for a reason. It's a scene that's incredibly powerful. It really sort of, it's so fucking bleak, and it is amazing that this movie does go so many different ways in terms of this sort of emotional roller coaster. It goes from the kind of like the wonder of finding this place with the excitement of having access to all of this stuff, through this kind of tragedy and this sort of like realization that the world is actually kind of screwed. And then, as we're getting into this point, it's the characters start falling into this self-indulgence. And like I say, before, the risk is less about whether it's the bikers or whether it's the zombies. It's more becoming complacent in this whole situation. That's what ultimately kind of gets them. And it's a human on human kind of conflict, which is the real battle within the movie.
Release Roger. No, I think you mean Release Roger.
Release Wadwick.
No Roger, no Wadwick. And no Spencer Tracy.
For someone with an eye patch, he has depth and perception.
Yeah. There's one thing you didn't really get in the theatrical version. You see, Peter goes off by himself and leaves them two, but you
Mm.
don't realise he's actually visiting his friend's grave.
Mm.
And she's got a point. I mean, all the registrars are probably dead by now.
I don't know. I almost kind of get the feeling that it's almost a cynical move on her part, because she's like, marriage and stuff is, it's only important if you got the process. It's a legal document and there's no lawyers.
So it makes you wonder, what is the time frame for how long have they been in the mall here? Because she's probably about 2 or 3 months, well, maybe a couple of months pregnant when they first take the place over. But here she is, looks like she's about ready to pop. So I don't know. What do
I
you
mean,
reckon?
you're talking about a good 6 or 7 months that the
Yeah,
time frame of the film is going over,
yeah,
because she's heavily pregnant by the end of it, and she's not even
yeah.
showing in the first bit. So
So I was thinking probably about 7, 8 months.
it's a fascinating sequence, isn't it? It's like, cause the one thing about this whole kind of situation that we're in is it's almost a fantasy, isn't it? Just having free run on a mall. Everything that's in there is yours to do with what you please. And now that they've got everything, they've almost got nothing. There's just nothing much for them to kind of live for in some respects. So then you get this very, very rare bit of nudity in a George Romero film.
Yeah, a little bit of boob there.
But isn't it kind of funny how much they look like mannequins in that though? Especially, yeah, Galen looks like one of the mannequins in that. But David does as well, because the one that that Roger bumps into at the bottom of
Yeah.
the escalator. That looks like his face, and there's almost a kind of foreshadowing of it earlier in the film. And it's kind of what they've become. They're in this sort of consumerist heaven, aren't they?
This is a great shot.
It is.
See the ball roll off here, and
Now that skeleton it drops by. Isn't that the one that Tom Savini used a real human skeleton for?
I don't know.
I can't remember if it was that or it was something in Creepshow or something. I think it was that one that he basically built the prosthetic corpse, well the zombie corpse on top of a real skeleton that he'd bought, but it ended up in some shop somewhere at some point getting sold, and the police got involved, and it had to go to a mortuary, and then they actually had to bury it.
I do remember hearing that somewhere. It was on one of the director's commentary tracks or something. But I forget which one. It might have been the Elite Laserdisc commentary track.
I love the scene
Can't
with her
remember
doing
now.
the makeup. She had to beg for this scene to be kept in, and she got it. And I think it's just a great little character moment. Well, you get the feeling that announcement that's going on over the tannoy was just one of those automated ones that they kept trying to avoid, but it was in, and it just went, nah, fuck it, we'll leave it in.
It could be. I love those old 70s record players.
Some sort of plexiglass seat as well. That's very 70s. I love the fact that all the spam is still untouched. They just went, nah, we're just using it as walls now. So what's for dinner? Spam fritters. Oh God, we truly are dead.
Spam, 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 bacon, eggs, and spam.
Hey, don't knock it. It's got a key.
Yeah, about to go into another Monty Python sketch if we're not careful. Sort of makes you wonder, how long do you reckon the government would hold out in a zombie apocalypse?
So that's how long the government hold out, as so much as how long does infrastructure hold out, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing here. You know, that the film Threads is part of it's so powerful because it's not just, you know, on a human level, it's on a societal level. And, you know, because infrastructure gets taken out, it all goes away.
Yeah.
God, that's a depressing movie.
Hell's Granny. Yeah, I remember that Python sketch.
See, a lovely moment ruined by bikers.
Yeah. Tom Savini again?
Yeah. What's the bet? And Tom Savini just had that.
Yeah,
the comb.
probably. How did they know they had a CB radio? And if so, how did they know what frequency they'd be listening to?
Well, I assume these guys have got, the good guys have got a scanner. Although, you know, you sort of, I guess you might have one just on the off chance, but I do love the fact that the leader's got an SS helmet on. It's like kind of like, well, you know, just way to signify who's the generic bastard in this particular situation.
Speaking of Monty Python, some of the stock music that was used in the Romero edit for the mall scene was actually used in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
What's it? Really?
Yeah, the intro to Monty Python, the intro music to Monty Python and the Holy Grail was used for the scene in the mall where they're closing the mall shutters down
Oh,
in
okay.
the extended version.
Uh huh.
Wasn't in the theatrical version, and the Argento version used completely different music.
Blue Iris says the bikers do look a bit trauma.
They do rather.
A good proportion of them were actually kind of like a local gang.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
And the young lad with the long hair was apparently the leader of it. Maybe they're just very, very good with bikes. It's like you can ride 16 each at the same time. Yeah. Might be giving them a little bit too much credit. We'll put up a sign saying McDonald's is closed, so quickly go away.
Yeah, I think the Goblins music that was used in the theatrical version of this was much better. This is a bit too heavy rock.
Yeah, it's getting into demons territory, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Great movie in its own right, but not Dawn of the Dead. See, another example of George Romero's sense of humour, really. He's having a bugle call. Just
Yeah.
as they're going at it. Yeah, I do prefer the George Romero's music choice for this sequence.
Yeah. The theatrical version.
Yeah.
This stop music here. This was the music for Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Okay. Vaguely remember that, yeah.
It keeps cutting off because the Norwegian subtitles at the bottom of the screen keep saying things like "a moose once bit my sister."
Yes. Yes. Oh, God, yes. There's a YouTuber called Out in the Woo did a visit to the Monroeville Mall, and he identified the point where the zombie's brains get blown out on the wall. It was like, this is the brick. Oh God, there was so much of this cut from the original, from the UK release. So much of it was missing.
Well, gore-wise, certainly, but I'd say a lot of this dialogue was missing from a lot of the prints.
Better build some bigger fridges then. It's sort of at this point you kind of like go, why aren't they just heading out? Isn't it really? Because it's like they've done so much damage to the place. It's not like they're ever going to be able to lock it back up again.
You know, I think the idea was just going to lock the stores up just to make things difficult for them. Then they were going to hide, but Stephen decided to start taking pot shots at
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Yeah, it's more like, you know, because now all the concourses and stuff are all kind of like because it's wide open. They've done quite a bit of damage. You sort of wonder whether or not the external doors would ever close again
Yeah.
reliably. It's a nitpick, but
Yeah, this scene in the theatrical version where the bikers are driving around in circles, the Goblins music for that I thought was the best version. But this is, like I say, this music they're using here is a bit too much like Demons.
yeah. Just expect a helicopter to come through the roof. Totally unexplained.
Yeah. Well, but actually, a helicopter coming through the roof would make a lot more sense in this version.
Yes, it would. Kind of make the ending a little bit more difficult to achieve, though. Well, those locked doors really helped. In some respects, you know, that the whole kind of idea that they're hoping they can sort of keep hold of it is part of the character arc, isn't it, really?
Mm-hmm. Back with the stock music again.
Yep.
Thing is, why are they nicking all this jewellery? It's not as if it's worth anything anymore.
Well, you know, after the apocalypse, you might want to open up a costume jewellery store.
I think that was Roy Frooms, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Frumkus or something, yeah. I think this is another scene that there was a lot of debate about. Is like, do we do this? I think in the grand scheme of things, though, as weird as it seems having this sort of stuff going on in a scene like this, it's almost perfect in some respects, because it just shows how little those guys actually give a shit about what it is they're actually doing. You know, they're not there for any. They're there to have a bit of fun and steal some stuff. That's about it.
Yeah, there was another brief appearance from George Romero back there, which we probably missed. Right at the end of the pie fight sequence, he runs across the camera wearing a Santa Claus suit
Yes.
in the background, but get blink and you miss it. Well, funny enough, Tom Savini's character in this, I believe he's called Nick.
Blades.
Well, yeah, it's Blades, but I
But
hear one of the other bikers refer to him as Nick, I think. And if you read the novel, Nick was sort of dressed similar to Santa Claus, like, you know, Saint Nick, but he was supposed to be a big fat guy. So obviously, Savini's character became Nick, and the Santa Claus suit became Romero.
There was at least one sensible biker in there who stole their bows and arrows.
Yeah.
You know, you sort of go, yeah, okay, you got a useful thing. The ones in the bank make me laugh, and the ones stealing your money. It's like, what the fuck are you going to do? Some just posh toilet paper, isn't it?
I don't understand. It's like, well, what are they going to do with it? You know, where are they going to spend it?
Maybe they have hope. Society will be back. Definitely one of the weirder bits, isn't it? With the guy
Yeah.
with the arm pressure, blood pressure thing.
Yeah, and then he does it again
Yeah,
later.
for science. He gets to shut that door and stuff. It's sort of good. You've seen that bloody key ring. It's got about 100 keys on it.
Yeah.
Spent about 5 minutes trying to find the right damn one.
Then the bikers come along and just blow it open with a shotgun.
Yeah.
This is another scene that was cut by the film censors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was completely cut.
Yeah. I think you see it get knocked off the bike, and that's about it, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and that bit was cut out as
Yeah.
well, where we
Yeah.
chops the head off the zombie. Yeah, that definitely wasn't
That
in it.
was. That, yeah. Yeah.
Then again, some of these weren't in the theatrical version either. They were only in the extended cut.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Which-
Pan's cut, should I say.
Which is a little bit kind of like confusing to me in some respects. Just the whole kind of cutting so much of that stuff out, and Romero would say it would probably for pacing. Like I say, I've never really felt that the movie in any cuts really suffered from pacing issues, particularly. There's always something interesting going on. That guy had to work hard for his role, the big guy.
Yeah, because when they first started filming, I think the zombie scenes, it was sort of like summer or whatever. But when they came to do a lot of the scenes, it was winter, and he was starting to turn up in these shorts.
Yep, and of course the scene that they actually sort of found him in was him bouncing on the outside of the window.
Yeah.
So he's outdoors, and it's like about kind of like 2 or 3 degrees maximum.
Talk about suffering for your art.
Well, I don't think it took too much makeup to make him blue.
Vandals.
A fair bit budget went on that bit.
I can imagine. Kind of looks like the old Black Friday sales, doesn't it?
It's not really a hip shooting gun, is it?
No, definitely not.
Tom Savini really getting into his role.
That was a bit of a racist comment, wasn't it?
Yeah, Kev Ray apparently had a word with him about that because he improvised it.
Oh, right, I didn't realise that. say, I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of Ken 4, eh?
He's like, nah, man, it's not me, it's the character. Please buy it, please buy it.
Thing is, a lot of the language was like that back in those
Mm.
days. I mean, you've only got to look at some of the old 70s comedies, and not even that, some of the old dramas to
Mm.
see that. Blimey. I mean, there's some old episodes of EastEnders where they're using some rather choice language, shall we say. Oh, there goes he gone.
It's the cleanest lift cables in the world.
Ouch.
Yeah. He really sells that though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Mm.
This bit with a knife was also cut for the UK release, I remember.
Yeah.
It looked weird because you see him go to grab something, and then in the next shot, it just shows you him kicking the zombie away. It's like,
Mm.
well, what happened there then?
Yeah, that stunt really did injure Tom Savini.
Yes, because he didn't land on the boxes properly, did he?
He
Sort
went
of
straight
hard
through the
landed
middle
on.
of it or something like that. And yeah, the boxes just parted and he went straight through the middle and landed on the ground.
Oh, right.
It just stopped him, getting killed, but apparently he was running around in a wheelchair for the next couple of weeks. But says Stephen and Peter took money from the bank earlier with that. You never know. Yes, you're quite right.
Again, in the book, the guy with the hammer was called Thor in that,
Mm.
and he was the one that originally got blown off the motorcycle.
Mm.
But obviously, for the film, they changed it to this guy. All these zombies surrounding him, and he chooses to
He's
shoot in
shooting
the
the
direction where
blank
there aren't
space in it,
any.
yeah. Practicalities in it, unfortunately. But like I say, bless George Romero for not wanting to hurt people.
Yeah. But blanks are dangerous, though.
Oh, very dangerous, yeah.
There was some American cop show, I forget what it was, or detective program, and some guy was prattling about with a blank fire and went, hey, look at this, bang, and he actually
Yep.
killed himself.
Yep.
Because the wadding in the, the blank's still got a bit of wadding in.
It's a concussion as well,
Close
because
enough range, that can...
push out right up to your head. That pressure's
Yeah.
got to go somewhere. So
Yeah, that
Just-
scene where he got his shoulder ripped off
Yeah.
there. If you look, there's no blood, and there's
Yeah.
what looks like a pipe
Yeah.
in it. Because he was supposed to bite the flesh around it, and the pipe was supposed to pump the blood out. But
it's just latex.
yeah,
I think this
Oh.
guy had it relatively easy compared to Joe Pilato.
oh god, yeah. Somebody switched the fridge off over Christmas, and all the guts were mouldy.
Yeah, and he was about a foot away from this just rancid guts. I mean, it was
Yeah.
probably not pleasant. Don't get me wrong, but at least there was no rubber chicken in that one.
No. Oh dear. He should have just stayed on top of the
Yeah,
lift.
yeah. Oh, flyboy, will you never learn? Well, you won't now. No, not Rip Taylor. He was my favourite zombie.
Well, at least he took several of the zombies with him.
Yes. Read the sign. One dead person in the lift at any one time. Just get down there with some band-aids. Help him out. A little bit of Savlon. A bit of TCP. God. You just imagine the cleaner coming in the next morning going, what the fuck happened here?
I'm sure you're all aware of there was originally scripted there was going to be an ending where Peter shoots himself and Fran decides to commit suicide by sticking her head up in the chopper blades. There's been a lot of debate over whether that was filmed or not, and if so, how much. And the general consensus is the scene where Fran sticks her head up into the chopper blades, that was not filmed. They did some test footage to see if they could get the effects dummy to work, but they couldn't get it to go. But they did film some footage of her body lying on the floor next to the helicopter with zombies around it.
The other thing that's connected to that is the head explosion in the building project. That was her head cast.
Yeah, that was her head cast. They stuck a beard on and used it for that scene. Because there is some picture somewhere of them with one of the dummies, and they've got it on. Got some wires on it, and they're filming next to the helicopter. So obviously they were testing it out, but they couldn't get it to work properly, so they never actually filmed that scene.
Yeah.
But they did film scenes of Fran, dead body, lying on the roof of the mall next to the helicopter.
They had a bunch of problems with using the helicopter as well, apart from anything else, because the hire company was incredibly strict about what could happen. There wasn't supposed to be anything touches the helicopter. So I do wonder if that came into it a little bit, but
well, I think I did read somewhere that Romero was planning on shooting two endings, the ending that they used and this other alternate ending, and he was going to decide later, but after the initial shooting he decided he was going to go with the upbeat one.
Which I think is the right decision.
Yeah, at least they get away at the end, even though you don't know what happens to them.
Yeah, because that was the other thing, wasn't it? Was the helicopter? The credits would roll, and it would stay on the helicopter with the rotor blades turning, and then towards the end of the credits, the fuel would run out on the helicopter. So even if it got on it,
they wouldn't have gotten very far.
They wouldn't have got very far. Because although Fran's been kind of trained in how to fly a helicopter, I don't think an auto-rotation landing was probably in her skill set.
No.
There's too much shit here. Must stay. Hi, honey, I'm Brains.
I'm sorry, I've just shot your boyfriend.
Yeah, nice. Still want to stay, love?
At one of these Living Dead weekends where they all these zombie fans have a look around the mall, I saw one. There was someone dressed up as Peter the zombie. Sorry, not Peter. Stephen,
Yeah.
the flyboy, as a zombie, and it looked really good.
Go out all out on some of these things. I mean, like with the cons and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen some of your photos with the aliens,
Oh,
various
yeah.
aliens get-ups. It was quite impressive, that stuff. Do not attempt to use the step ladder when there are zombies around.
No.
Health and safety.
On
That
a
is a headshot.
related note, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with the film Waxwork, which was kind of a loose remake of the Horrors of the Wax Museum, which had Zach Galligan from Gremlins in it. Well, originally there was going to be a scene where I think it was they were jumping into different because they get trapped in the exhibits, don't they? And there was going to be a scene where they're in a shopping mall full of zombies. Then there's going to be another one in like a I don't know, I forget all these other scenarios, but they didn't have the budget. But they did actually use the idea for the sequel, Lost in Time.
Yes.
There's a scene where they're sort of like jumping into different dimensions. There's this one scene in a shopping mall, and there's these two SWAT guys with machine guns shooting these zombies. And of course, there's Zach Galligan and whoever the bad guy was having this sword fight in the middle of it. They're going, who the hell are those guys?
Yeah, it's a bit of a guilty pleasure, that one.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you revisit it, you go, actually, it's quite bad. But Bruce Campbell's in that. Marina Sirtis.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, Marina Sirtis is in it as well. She's in
The first film had quite a good cast. It had David Warner, Patrick McNee.
Yeah.
John Rhys Davis.
Waxwork 2, Lost in Time.
Yeah. For some reason, that was released in the UK just as Lost in Time. And marketed as a standalone film. I don't know why, because the original did quite well on home video. So.
Yeah, I do remember watching that quite a long time ago. Bruce Campbell with his chest, all the skin on his chest taken.
Yeah.
And Marina Sirtis throwing like bags of salt and bottles of vinegar. Oh, he's got a better gun.
And now it's suddenly been snowing.
I think it's a perfect ending.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pity it doesn't show you what happened to them after they flew off. But then again, I think maybe that's best left ambiguous.
It kind of is, because you've got the sense of hope that they'll actually sort of get away and do all that kind of stuff. But how do you actually sort of show that they've gone on and they thrived, and then it goes 5 years later? Who wants that ending?
Yeah. I know this version here, the Argento version, it doesn't show you these clips. It just has the credits over a black background, and it has the rock and roll sort of demon style music. I think this ending's better.
Yeah, but they've taken it all back over again. I like the way there's a bunch of guys down there still chowing on a biker.
Yeah.
Never noticed that before. But anyway, that was Dawn of the Dead. Super extra
That was
long.
good fun. Really enjoyed that with you guys.
Yeah, that was a fantastic fun to go through that again. I mean, you've got to do it at least once a year, haven't you? It's just kind of demanded. So we will stop there, and we'll start wrapping up at this point. But thank you so much for that. I mean, Dawn of the Dead stands as. I don't tend to have a absolute favourite film, but it is completely up there for me.
Yeah.
Just one of the most. You can go into the kind of realms of it being like a hugely influential, which it is, but it is just endlessly enjoyable. I can watch that film so many times in all the cuts and always come away with it just having had a great time. And I think that's that. For that, it makes it one of the greatest movies of all time for me. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it's definitely one of my all-time favourites. I always imagined myself, if it was a zombie apocalypse, holding up in the Queensgate Centre in Peterborough and doing the same thing.
Isn't it already like that in Peterborough?
Oh, not far off.
It's a funny old place. You have to be a little bit more local to understand that one, I guess.
Yeah, I do know there's quite a few newer horror fans don't seem to like the original Dawn of the Dead so much. They find it's a bit slow, and I know sort of what they mean. It does sort of get a bit slow in the middle, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
I always say, no, stick with it. You know,
it's one of those things.
At the end.
I think it is one of those things. So, yeah, the movies back in, God, it makes you sound old. When you go, oh, back in the day, the movies were longer, and it wasn't really that they were longer. They were slower. There was a slower pace because it was
yes.
Generally speaking, I was kind of getting the feeling that they didn't feel the need, and the audience didn't feel the need to be filling it absolutely every damn second with action. I find a lot of action films just tiring to sit and watch.
Tell me about it.
You're watching like a Transformers film. It's like, I can't remember, it was Dark of the Moon or whatever it was, and it's like the last third of the movie is just in a continuous action scene. You get about 20 minutes into it and you're going, oh, I've still got a fucking hour left. So how the hell do you keep up that pace? And because I find that boring, because I like movies that have the peaks and troughs. It takes time to kind of lead you through kind of this story and give the characters room to breathe, where they're not just having to pull out guns and battle their way through the entire damn movie. And Dawn of the Dead is a perfect example of that for pacing. Like I say, I'll say it again, it's even this super long version is not boring to me, not in the slightest. There's not a moment of it that I'm not interested and engaged, and that's a sign of a damn good film for me. But
yeah,
we will call it a day there, folks. So thank you, Simon, for joining.
Hey, always a pleasure. I love doing these. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. And I hope
to get Kerry on one week, and maybe some other people. Then I'll come back in a few weeks after that or something.
Yeah, I've got to figure out multi kind of camera sort of stuff. It gets tricky, but we will definitely kind of look at it.
We'll have to have us all at once. Like I say, do Kerry 1 week, someone else another, and I'll come back some other time.
But thank you so much for joining. We're going to call it a day because I have to run to the loo. I've been drinking beer. This is a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
But I will say thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you on the next one. Hopefully the next one will be something a bit unusual. I'm going to have a look around and see if I can find something which might catch you a little bit off guard, something that you haven't seen before, because we've done an awful lot of repeats just recently. But we'll try and venture out and find something different. So for now, it's goodbye from me and Simon, and we will see you very soon.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Good night, folks.